What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to break down what's going on with the overall market and how it may affect Tesla as well, because of the fact that Jerome Powell is going to be speaking for 2 days in a row on Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm going to break down the technicals, the data, and what on earth I do anticipate to happen for tomorrow as I give you guys my price prediction and why you should be very, very cautious during times like these. Now, before I break anything down, though, before I get into any more details about Tesla and what's happening with the markets, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 7 free stocks, and 5 out of those 7 free stocks could be a free Tesla share. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in 3.5 weeks. Make sure you check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Tesla was up 3.61% for the day. Overall, we did have a nice uptrend that was being respected, but the real question is, will Tesla and the market continue this? Now, so far, Tesla has been hit with some negative news that could actually increase the odds of Tesla underperforming a bit. That's because of the fact that Tesla will be having an actual recall. This is not some kind of BS article for once. This is actually the truth, but it's actually going to be only thousands of Tesla Model Ys. It's actually not too many, which is the good news. Now, this time, software is not going to fix the problem. That's why I said it's an actual recall. And what's essentially happening is the NHTSA was actually reviewing Tesla, and they had a new filing report that came out. And in the report, they mentioned the fact that many of the bolts for the seatbelts for the rear of the car are not necessarily tight enough on many of the models. So 3,470 of the Model Ys from 2022 to 2023, they need to actually go back to the factories, go back to Tesla, and they need to fix them. That's going to be very important. Now, in my opinion, that's not really that horrible of a piece of news, and I really want the best for everyone involved. I want people to be as safe as possible. So sure, this is important, but I want to mention that it's not that horrible because it's only 3,470 of the Model Ys. This is not like some massive 100,000 car recall or anything like that. So this in turn, although it's not that bad, what does worry me a bit is how the mainstream media is going to handle this, right? The media loves to make Tesla look 10 times worse than how bad it actually is during certain periods of time. And I worry that the media might twist this and just start, screaming, it's a recall, Tesla's doing horrible, Teslas aren't safe, even though that's not necessarily the truth. And that's why this could have a negative effect on the price action for tomorrow, right? We're actually seeing this all over the news. The Tesla Model Y recalled over a rear seatbelt issue. Once again, not the end of the world, but the media will actually play a big role in how this is actually interpreted. Now, what else is worth noting is there has been a lot of talk about Tesla creating a wireless car charger. Just remember that this is not necessarily confirmed just yet. We did actually see a picture during Investor Day about this type of product. I believe that it's very likely that this will come out. Tesla will announce something like this in the future. But as of right now, it's not 100% confirmed, and they haven't actually come out with the product just yet. So please be very patient on this. Once again, it is awesome news, but it's not necessarily huge enough, in my opinion, to help the share price push up even more. Now, for the overall week, we have a very important, a very critical week ahead of us. There isn't really too much going on for Monday. We have some manufacturing data coming out, but the big thing that's coming out is going to be Jerome Powell speaking. He's going to be giving a testimony in front of Congress for 2 consecutive days on Tuesday and Wednesday, 30 minutes after the market opens on both of the days. So early in the morning, Jerome Powell will be speaking. When he speaks, expect some crazy, crazy volatility, and it's actually very possible for him to actually pump the markets, or he can actually cause the markets to crash. So we have to be very careful here. But I will break down what the technicals tell us about this. And it's actually going to be very interesting. First, he's going to be speaking, I believe, to the House, and the Senate is going to be on Wednesday. So he will make some very important claims, and I do believe he will be questioned during the testimony. So be very careful there. Now, for Tesla as a stock, overall, very awesome stock overall, but I want to note that the price pairs ratio has been on a bit of a decline. This is actually telling me that Tesla is showing some weakness compared to before. It's not necessarily rallying like it was before, it's slowing down a bit. This also has to do with the fact that, Investor Day just wasn't living up to the hype overall. It was a good event technically for the long-term future of the company and its production lines, but for the short term, I don't expect it to actually continue to see bullish price action because of Investor Day solely. I think Tesla's likely going to be reactive to the overall market, if anything. Now, looking at the price comparison, we can see right here Tesla's actually not fairly undervalued compared to SPY. It's actually doing quite well so far, and it is going to be heavily dependent on the overall market. And that's actually a big transition away from the bullish rally we saw from before. Now, when it comes to analysts, some changes have been actually made. Needham, I don't know if I said that right. They're actually reiterating you should hold on to Tesla. KGI Securities is actually more neutral on Tesla now. They're not saying it's going to outperform anymore. And then Daiwa Capital, I do apologize if I said that wrong, is saying that Tesla will most likely outperform the market and do very, very well. So that's actually some bullish news as well, but not enough, in my opinion, to offset the recall. Now, Tesla tends to be green about 53% of the time on Mondays as of right now. I'm hoping that this could help Tesla a little bit, but overall, the recall news could offset it as well. So be very careful there. Tesla does tend to perform a lot better as the hours go on, particularly after the third to fourth hours. So be very prepared for more volatility during that time. But all of these technicals won't matter as much on like Tuesday and Wednesday when Jerome Powell starts speaking. And if he gives the markets a reality check, everything could also change. So please be very prepared for that. As far as the short interest goes on Tesla, it hasn't necessarily increased too much. If anything, it did come down a little bit by the time we got to Friday. So there was a little bit shorting that happened, and we did actually see some shorts cover, but it wasn't necessarily as major as it was for the overall market. When it comes to Tesla, though, we did have some pretty average volume, a little bit below average at 154 million on Friday, and yet Tesla was green. So I do see that as a pretty good sign that Tesla is a little bit more price sensitive to less volume. And that means that if we do get a lot of buying pressure off a very bullish piece of news, or the opposite, lots of selling pressure, it will heavily affect how Tesla ends up moving in a bigger manner than before. That's the interesting thing about this. Now, when it comes to Tesla's overall, short volume percentage, we actually saw this decrease a bit to about 50%. So right now the algos are almost 50-50. And we're not seeing as much shorting as before, but not as much buying at the same time. So now what's going to happen to the markets for tomorrow? In my opinion, one thing that's very important is I think the markets might try to pump just a little bit into the open, then we might actually see a very important rejection, right? Because on the daily, when you look at SPY, and I'm going to actually close up my drawings when I talk about this, when you look at the EMAs, not the EMAs, the moving averages, right? The 20 period moving average, you will notice that we have a tendency of getting rejected off the 20 moving average during these rallies. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So look at right over here where the blue line is. You could see SPY got a bounce here. We got rejected off the 20 moving average. Then we continue to go lower before we continue to remain bullish, right? Another instance where we got a counter trend rally was back around this like June, this April, May, and June period where the market rejected off the 20 moving average. We came down, we got close to it, we failed. Same thing again in May. And then June came, we actually broke above it temporarily before we did come right back down. And we rejected off the blue line, the 20 period moving average again. Now, going into like August, the same thing happened. We got another rejection off the 20 moving average on the daily. Again, it happened. Again, it happened. And now today, we actually broke below it, and now we're actually trying to fight as we get very close to it. So the real question is, could the market actually break above this? Like I said before, the market is actually quite overbought. So the technicals are basically telling us that we're likely going to see the market attempt to break it, but the odds do favor SPY getting a rejection off 405, maybe slowing down a bit to cool off its RSI and etc. On the 1 hour time frame, once again, we're quite overbought. Even though the MACD is wide open, it is actually tightening just a little bit. But I do believe we're going to come very close to this 405 level, and we might see a rejection around there, and the market might start to pull back a little bit, especially because of the fact that there might be a lot of profit takers tomorrow in anticipation of what Jerome Powell ends up saying. And Powell is going to be speaking once again on Tuesday and Wednesday. So it's going to be very important. So I'm essentially seeing the market trying to push up more, and the odds are favoring the market maybe getting a slight rejection, cooling off a bit If not on Monday, then by Tuesday, most likely. But it is very possible we could see a bit of a rejection tomorrow and a somewhat red day. That's going to be completely normal, though. Nothing to worry about because we are up pretty big in a very short period of time. Now, overall, we could see right here the put to call ratio for Monday is not necessarily that big. We have max pain at 398, 1.93 put to call ratio. But because max pain's at 398, the market could still drop a little bit, and yet the market makers would be fine. So I'm not saying we have to close around there, but I do think the market is due for a slight pullback. It would be completely normal and nothing to worry about. But this options chain is telling me a different story, and that is the fact that the market might pull back. Maybe by Monday, maybe Tuesday and Wednesday, the market pulls back a bit. But by Thursday and maybe even Friday, the market makers might try to pump the market again because we have a 2.12 put to call ratio, max pain at 400, and over 730,000 puts out of the money, meaning that the market makers might want the market to pump again, very similar to what happened last week as we were slow in the very beginning, followed by a very nice bounce and a bullish move at the end of the week. We could see that happen again this week. Then the same thing could even happen on the 17th of March. But once again, that's going to depend on CPI on the 14th as well. So what am I essentially seeing? I don't truly know what's going to happen for Tuesday and Wednesday. That's the bottom line. There's a chance that all these technicals could be like knocked out of the water because of Jerome Powell. Maybe he pumps the market. Maybe he ends up crashing the market. Who knows? But I believe from a technical standpoint, the odds favor SPY trying to rally to about 405 or so, a little bit more, and then maybe getting a rejection very close to this gap resistance right here. We might not fill the gap just yet. We might come a little bit short. I mean, the super bullish possibility would be us like filling the gap, then getting rejected. But I don't really think that's going to happen. I think the odds favor us trying and actually failing than actually retracing a bit and seeing SPY come all the way down to like 402, maybe even the low 400s over the next couple of days. But then we will react to Jerome Powell. There's also a chance that the market will come down and establish a higher low. If that happens, we have the potential to bounce later on during the week and then continue to climb by like Friday, maybe even going into next week. Right? For the triple Q, very similar story. We're actually seeing the triple Q very close to 300, and that's actually very close to where this gap is right here. I believe the triple Q might try to fill the gap around 300, so maybe a small pop into the morning, followed by a potential failure and a rejection as the triple Q ends up cooling off. This will likely be correlated with Apple, maybe Tesla as well. So we could actually see a bit of a rejection tomorrow and a slight cool off on this as well. For the dollar index, I'm actually seeing this thing potentially coming down a little bit. So let me actually bring back my drawings. Sorry, guys, I actually hid those from you guys. But coming all the way down on the daily, the dollar index is actually close to a major level of support, and that's going to be where the 20 period moving average is. That happens to be around 104.28 as of right now. This is telling me that the dollar might come down a little bit, meaning the market might actually pump just a tiny bit before this thing could potentially bounces. It comes back into this zone right here, which means that the market could actually have a little bit of downside, just a little bit of a pullback. But we will react to Jerome Powell, and that's going to be what's very important. When it comes to other stocks out there, like if you want to look at the VIX, in my opinion, is getting very close to a pivotal level of support. Yes, the VIX is on a downtrend. Yes, this is looking pretty bearish, but the VIX might try to hold 18, if not like 17.8, or this like resistance, which is now going to become support from the falling wedge. If it does come all the way down there off another pop in the markets, it might try to bounce a little bit. And if it does bounce, once again, that could cause, or this is going to be correlated with the market essentially causing it, the market coming down a bit to help the VIX bounce, right? Now, finally, I'm going to talk about Apple before I transition to Tesla. Apple, in my opinion, still looks very strong. Apple might try to fill this gap around this 152 level. So this is why the market might pump a little bit, and then we could see a rejection around this zone. We might see Apple reject and cool off just a little bit, come all the way back down to like 150, maybe all the way down to the high 140s, and we will react to Jerome Powell. The whole market does have this gap down here. SPY has a gap down there, so does like Tesla and etc. So we might see the market cool off a bit in anticipation of Powell. Maybe Powell causes the market to pull back a little bit. But I'm guessing, and this is just my prediction, I don't know what Powell is going to say, so I can't promise anything. But my prediction is The market will pop a little bit on Monday, then start coming down. We get the rejection on Monday. Tuesday/Wednesday, the market might shop around, maybe come all the way down to fill this gap, but we might establish a higher low than before. We might establish a higher low than like the low we made way back here on Apple and also for like SPY and etc. And then the market might continue to remain bullish as we approach CPI because of the options chain, right? The options chain looks like by Friday of this week, later into the week, after the pullback happens, we might get a nice bounce and a bullish continuation because the market makers might try to artificially pump the markets to squeeze shorts and also cause lots of pain. It's a real possibility, but it will depend on what Powell says. So finally, for Tesla, what am I essentially seeing? Well, Tesla actually has a gap above it. The gap happens to be way up here around this 202 to 203 level. If Tesla could break 200, yes, it could fill the gap, but that's going to be the bullish possibility. So I'm going to talk about the bullish possibility, the bearish one, and then my prediction. If you're bullish on Tesla, okay, if you think the market's going to just explode again, that is still possible, even though it's a little unlikely, it is still possible. You have to watch this 200 level. If Tesla breaks 200, it's likely going to fill the gap. If we fill the gap, we could get to this 202 to 203 range, then finally retest the resistance trend line around that 205 to 206 level. That's going to be a major level of resistance as Tesla has been on a bit of a downtrend over the last couple of weeks. Now, this tells me that if Tesla does end up actually touching this trend line, it could be a major resistance and maybe slow down around there. But that's actually a very bullish possibility because of the fact that that's where resistance is. And it's quite a bit of dollars ahead. It's very, very high up there. That's going to be like a $9 move. Very unlikely, but it is a possibility. Now, if you're bearish on Tesla, if you think Tesla's going to take a hit, we first have to watch this 195 level all the way down here. If Tesla fails at 195, this thing is likely going to come all the way down to fill this gap and actually come all the way down to 191 and potentially around the 190 area. That's a more bearish possibility. What do I think is going to happen though? Somewhere in the middle. I believe when you look at Tesla on the daily, we actually got a rejection of the 20 moving average as well, and that's where Tesla rejected. Also, you'll notice that when you zoom out of the chart, Tesla has a tendency of actually trying to break above the 20 moving average. Then we end up coming down a little bit afterwards, right? It's done that on plenty of occasions. Now, I don't think that this guarantees anything about tomorrow, but this does tell me that we have some resistance ahead of us. I believe that tomorrow, Tesla's going to try to rally just a tiny bit. I don't know if it's going to break above 200. I do believe it's going to try to do so. And if anything, if it breaks it, we might even try to see this gap get filled, maybe around 202. So somewhere between 200 and 202, we might see Tesla try to attempt to get there. And it's likely going to fail and remain relatively weak because of the negative news involving the recall. So this could be a giant trap or like a mini trap that plays out, not a giant one, a mini one. A mini trap could play out where the market pops just a little bit, then we see a big rejection and some bears come in and they start dragging the market down a bit. I believe that's very likely to happen over the next 2 days, maybe on Monday. Tesla pushes up to about maybe 200, maybe even 202. Then we see a rejection and Tesla starts to actually cool off as the day goes on. And we might see Tesla actually close a little bit in the red around the mid 190 area, very close to where gap support is. Now, I don't know if Tesla's going to fill this gap tomorrow. It is a possibility. I'm not really counting on it, but please be prepared for that just in case the media does incite more fear and negative sentiment because of the small recall it's been talking about. All right. So please be ready for that. Once again, guys, tomorrow it's not that huge of a day. The bigger day is going to be Tuesday and Wednesday because Powell could cause the whole market to rip again, or he could cause the market to crash. So be ready for Jerome Powell. He's going to be talking early in the morning on Tuesday and Wednesday. And until then, I believe Tesla's likely going to try to push up tomorrow. Once again, try to get to about 200, maybe even 202 if we break 200. Likely get a rejection in that zone, then start to bleed as the day goes on and maybe close a little bit in the red, very close to the mid 190 area. Could we fill the gap tomorrow? It is a possibility if we break below 195. It is possible, but I'm not really counting on it to drop that much, right? So with that said, thank you all so much for listening. I hope this was as clear as possible, and I really want the best for everyone. Tesla to the moon because the long-term future is still incredibly bright, and peace out.